Talking all things SEC football with our good friend Trey Wallace, senior college football insider over at Outkick.com, a frequent guest here on SEC Unfiltered. Trey, a crazy week one comes to an end, and in comes what should be another wild week two with some big matchups in the SEC, brother. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm so thrown off by the days. I mean, I thought today was Tuesday. It has been, don't get me wrong, it's been a lot of fun. It was a good first weekend. You got to pace yourself, man. We have got 4.5 more months of this. So, especially with the playoff, man, we won't get done till, goodness, the end of January. So just trying to pace things out, brother. That's it. It's good.
Hey, at least for the rest of the year, you won't have any more college football games on Sundays until I think the bowl season too. So gives you a little bit of breathing room as well.
Yeah, no, that helps out too. And then, covering the sport as a whole too, Monday night, with FSU going down, it's been wild. Got another big weekend ahead. And yeah, man, looking forward to it. Happy to be on.
Mm-hmm. Well, we appreciate you, Trey. We mentioned before the broadcast started, you're always a frequent guest on here, and we love hearing you talk and hearing your taste. Go ahead, go check out him over at Outkick.com on the Trey Wallace Show podcast. Got some great content there and there. Outkick's one of the fastest growing media outlets out there. They've been around. Him, Clay, Bobby, all the guys out there. We have great relationships with them. We're blessed to have worked with them in the past. So let's go ahead and just look at some of these matchups that you're going to see on Saturday. Let's just start off with the big one that College Game Day is headed to. Texas and Michigan, the top 10 matchup. This is a defining game for both of these teams. For Michigan, it's about how is their offense better, or how has their offense been despite the loss of J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum and the elite talent that you had at receiver. Now you have a former walk-on who's now at your starting quarterback that performed well, but again, he hasn't faced a big-time opponent. Their offense looked okay against Fresno State. They did struggle at times a bit, but I mean, Davis Warren still has a lot to get through. Meanwhile, while Texas on the offensive side of the ball, you know about how they are. It's going to be a chess match between Texas's elite offense and their skill receivers against Michigan's front four and how their secondary will face against this elite talent. What else stands out to you when you watch these two teams?
I am excited to see the Quinn Ewers, Isaiah Bond connection in the big house. Like I that to me, look, I know it was Fresno State, that first game for Michigan, but I still look at it and I think, okay, they're having to replace a lot on defense. And for me, this feels like a game where Quinn Ewers can come out and throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. It reminds me, and a lot of people are like, oh man, how's Texas going to react going to the big house? And I'm thinking, okay, well, they were in Tuscaloosa last year. I mean, they went down there, they took care of business. You look at what they were able to do in the running category, the rushing category, and then also what Quinn was able to do down the field. Xavier Worthy. I just think this is a game where Michigan's still trying to figure themselves out with Warren at quarterback, while at the same time you've got an experienced Texas offense coming in. The atmosphere is going to be fantastic. It's going to be great. If you have never been to a game at Michigan, I urge you to go. Even if you're not a Michigan fan, it's just fun. I was there for the Ohio State game last year. But I think overall, looking at this, I think the noon kickoff kind of helps get things going. Don't have to wait all day. And this is one of those things where, I still look at the Michigan team and I know what Edwards has at being able to rush the football, but at the same time, it's so different than Blake Corum. So when we look at what Texas can do in their front seven, they're going to make life miserable, for the quarterback. And I think that whatever Michigan can do to try to offset that, they're going to, whether that's be dumping out to the flats or, trying to find the slants across the middles. I just look at this game and I think, yes, it is very big. It is kind of a benchmark of what we're looking at when it comes to the playoffs, and we're getting this game so early in the season. But I'm expecting, honestly, I think Texas goes up there and wins by 10 points, maybe more. I look at the line on that game. It kind of fits that narrative. to me, this is just a more experienced Texas team going to Michigan, that they can handle the noise, handle the crowd, handle just the atmosphere in general, and settle in, just the same way Notre Dame did at Texas A&M, where it was ugly in the first half. Notre Dame tried to, 110,000 people in College Station, settle in, don't let the nerves go crazy on you. They figure out a way to get a win. I think that's the same thing with Texas this weekend. So I expect the Longhorns to win on Saturday. It might get a little dicey in the second half, but still, I certainly would go with Quinn Ewers over what Michigan is trying to do at the quarterback position.
Speaking of the quarterback position, when you look at Michigan, do you think the quarterback battle is still on with Davis Warren and Alex Orji, or is this still a Davis Warren offense that's going to be led?
I think if Davis does not start getting better is not the right way to really put this. I think he has got to find himself in the big moments. I think that that Fresno State game was so close, and really, if it wasn't a pick six towards the end of that one, Michigan is, the game is not out of hand or anything like that. I do think that there's going to be times where you see Sharon Moore maybe try to dial up both quarterbacks in and out a little bit, maybe try to catch Texas off guard if he can. But I still think this is Davis Warren's team. And he's got the talent too. This is a kid that, look, he's got an arm. He can get outside the pocket when needed. So I do think this is still his team. I think, though, that you could see a little bit of not overly flip-flopping with the quarterback situation, but at least trying to keep Texas on their toes when it comes to defense.
Let's go stick with the defensive side of the ball, and let's shift over to Arkansas and Oklahoma State. I know
I love it.
Arkansas's defense against Ollie Gordon is going to be a fun matchup. I don't really have confidence in Oklahoma State's Q. I think that they're still young, and I still think that they're inexperienced going into this offense. And you saw a lot of that last year as well, or last week, I should say. Oklahoma State's defense really struggled against last year's Walter Payton Award winner for South Dakota State. And he really torched him in the air raid. Yeah. I mean, he threw for almost 400. I think he threw for almost 300 yards and had a pair of scores or something. It kept South Dakota State in the ballgame. Taylor Green is a different breed of quarterback. I was skeptical about him going into the opening game, and he showed out. 10 scores on 10 possessions. I know it was against an HBCU, but I mean, you're not going to see that very often. You're not going to see a lot of teams really take their foot off the gas. Arkansas never did the entire game, and it seemed like Oklahoma State kind of let up after they got to a comfortable lead. And I think that might be the narrative of what's going to happen. I think this is a game that's really going to define where Sam Pittman is at the end of the year. If he doesn't win this game, he could probably kiss his job goodbye. I think that Oklahoma State could be on upset alert here. I think that their running game is going to get a lot better. I think that when you get Taylor Green into a groove, he's going to light your butt up. I think that this defense is going to get after Oklahoma State. I think they're going to shut down the run game, and I do tend to see Oklahoma State on upset alert this year. I don't know if it'll happen or not, but that is just, of course, my speculation. Wanted to get your thoughts on that as well.
I am looking forward to this game because I think offensively, Arkansas can go toe-to-toe with Oklahoma State. I do think that Taylor Green is going to cause problems for Oklahoma State's defense, especially outside the pocket. I think that when you look at what Bobby Petrino has been able to do, I get that it was Arkansas Pine Bluff. I understand it. But at the same time, like you mentioned, they never took their foot off the gas. This was a football team that came out there, made a statement. I know it was opening game of the season, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, Arkansas's got to find a way to stop Ollie Gordon. And Ollie Gordon, they're going to do their damnedest to run Ollie Gordon like crazy on this Arkansas defense. And if they can do that, it gives an opportunity for Bowman, a quarterback for Oklahoma State, to be able to kind of space things out. But I'm kind of feeling the Razorbacks here. There's something about this game that if they shut down Ollie Gordon, and when I say shut down, I mean, okay, let's limit him to under 130 yards rushing. Ollie's going to get his. He is a good running back, one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country. But at the same time, there's something about this Bobby Petrino thing where he comes in and maybe he's the savior for Sam Pittman and gets him another year. This is a defining game. I know it's early in the season, but it is. And it's a benchmark to see what the rest of the season is going to look like for Arkansas. And I think they do have a veteran presence. So going on the road, I don't think this is going to be something that, messes with their head. I think Stillwater is going to be an exciting environment. But at the same time, though, Arkansas has a veteran presence enough to go in there and kind of shut that noise out. And I do think that Arkansas can grab the win. Now, the biggest thing to me, brother, is how does this play out when it comes to run defense? Like, I know that Bobby Petrino is going to open it up on offense. I get that part of it. But at the same time, can you stop Oklahoma State? Can you stop them when they're going to rush Ollie twice, and then on third down, they're going to pass it and try to get you deep? It's just, to me, this one's going to go back and forth. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for the Razorbacks to kind of make a statement. So it's not surprising. It would not be surprising to me one bit if Arkansas goes to Stillwater and grabs the win. They got to have a lot of things go their way on defense, but this is going to be a fun game. I think that with both offenses, we could see something, 35, 38, something. I mean, there's going to be some points scored. And I think, to me, that's going to be the difference maker at the end of the day. I'm taking Arkansas on the upset here. I am. I haven't even put out my predictions for the week, but we're sitting here recording this right now. Before the weekend starts, I think Arkansas goes to Oklahoma State and wins. I do think Ollie Gordon gets his, but at the end of the day, Bobby Petrino and that offense, they figure out a way to score late and grab it.
And let me tell you something about Travis Williams' offense or defense.
Yeah.
This team has improved drastically from where they were 2 years ago. I think this was what, a bottom 100 defense, and then they elevate that from there to I think 47th last year. And if their offense steps up last year, like they're doing right now so far with Bobby Petrino, that would have been a 7-5, 8-4 regular season. Now you're looking at this year. Now that reality starts to set in, guys, we have an opportunity to go back to a bowl game. We have an opportunity to save a head coach's job. We get an opportunity to save the athletic department some dollars.
Yeah. Well, you get an opportunity where you don't have to make a decision the first weekend in November what the future of the football program is looking like.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can grab a win at Oklahoma State, you're looking at Arkansas' schedule, you're setting yourself up for a bowl game here. And I do like what Robinson has done on defense. And I do like what they have done to bring in the right players, especially on the defensive line, linebacker spot. So to me, this is going to be an exciting game. It's going to be fun. It's going to get a little ugly at times. That's okay in the trenches. But at the same time, I think Arkansas is riding a little bit of momentum here. And I wouldn't just say coming off that first game. I would say coming off fall camp, the way things have gone, and talking with folks in Fayetteville. Just keep an eye out on this one. This could be one where the Razorbacks take it.
We'll get back to Sam Pittman in just a little bit, Trey. Let's go ahead and give a quick shout out to our good friends over at Prize Picks. Go on over to prizepicks.com or download the Prize Picks app on your Apple or Android device and use code SECU at initial sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. That's prizepicks.com, one of the best sites for fantasy gambling. And ladies and gentlemen, use code SECU for $50 instantly. So, going to our next big game of the weekend, North Carolina State and Tennessee is going to be prime time. It's a game that I don't think people really understand how important this game is. This is a heck of a matchup.
Yeah.
You got the young phenom coming in, the 5-star in Nico Iamaleava, who's making his second ever start. First game on the road, though. He played in a neutral site, and he played in Neyland last week. Now you're going on the road to Bank of America. By the way, we'll be heading to Bank of America this upcoming weekend to go hang out with the folks in Knoxville. But this is going to be a heck of a matchup. North Carolina State's defense, so it's a top 50 nationally, bring back a lot of talent. Yeah, I know they lost a lot of dudes against the young Tennessee offense that should be unbelievable. I checked the over-under according to ESPN. It's 60.5.
I'm looking at it. Yeah.
They're looking at a shootout right now. I don't know if it's going to get that way. I think that it's going to be relatively close. I think that it's going to be like what you saw with LSU and USC. I think both offenses are going to be stifling. I think that both defenses are going to step up. I think you're going to see a lot of really big-time prospects come out of nowhere and make plays. I like Tennessee's receiving core with Chris Brazzell, with Squirrel White and company. And look, you've got one of the best young quarterbacks to throw it to. And I think North Carolina State's defense is going to be in for quite a ride. But this isn't Dave Doran's first rodeo. You know he's faced top-tier offenses like that. He's faced guys like that in the ACC. So I wanted to get your thoughts on what else do we need to look out for this upcoming Saturday at Bank of America.
I think the biggest thing is for Tennessee's side is running the football with Dylan Sampson. I think Tennessee's offensive line, to me, is damn strong. And I think at the same time, watch for Brew McCoy at wide receiver for Tennessee. Coming back from that ankle injury, he's a full go. And I think this is an opportunity for Nico and him to connect. Tennessee's receiving core is so damn deep, dude. I mean, you got Dante Thornton out there. I mean, you talked about Tuam Brazil, and you've also got Nimrod. You throw in there, you got Squirrel Wright, Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton. Like, they got guys. And I think the separation down the field, who you going to leave open? You're going to have to double somebody. So you're going to leave open Squirrel, Brew, Dante. I think NC State's defense, in my opinion, they probably should have lost that game to Western Carolina because Western Carolina left a lot of points on the field. But at the same time, okay, first game, it happens. We saw it all around the country. Grayson McCall at quarterback for North Carolina State. He is good. I think that it's a little different in this offense compared to what we have seen in the past when he was at Coastal. And I think that, we could have seen him at Auburn last year if things would have gone the right direction. But same time, I think the over-under is kind of hitting that mark. I do think that Tennessee, the one thing Tennessee has right now, especially on offense, I'm going to get the defense side. The offensive side is they trust Nico so much. And for him, sometimes he doesn't even need the helmet communication to come from Josh Heupel. He knows what that next play is going to be. I think him being in the system for a while now. And also, I think the biggest thing too, one of them is, it's going to be fun because this is such a neutral site game. North Carolina State fans, Tennessee fans, all traveling to Charlotte. In my opinion, it's probably going to be like 60-40, something along those lines, a little bit of a split, but it doesn't matter. Neutral, I would feel a little bit different if Tennessee was going to North Carolina State and playing this game in Raleigh. But at the same time, one thing that Tennessee has this year that they have not had in the past, depth on the defensive line, and they have got some bad dudes up front. And I think, to me, James Pierce played 10 snaps last weekend. The guy didn't even get his motor running. He was on idle. And it was for a reason. They didn't need him last week. So you throw in James Pierce, you got Amari Thomas on that defensive line. And I could go on and on. I just feel like Tennessee is going to put some pressure on Grayson McCall and force him into mistakes. But McCall is a veteran quarterback. Nico, to me, see how he does. We saw him in the bowl game last year against Iowa, and he did well. Saw him last week. To me, he's got such a perfect throw. I know it was Chattanooga, but at the same time, it doesn't matter who the opponent is if you're just throwing straight dimes along the sideline or across the middle. The defense is still trying to play. Nico looks like the guy at quarterback. And we'll see how that acts. He's going to have his moments this year, okay? It's not going to go well. You see how he responds. But this weekend against North Carolina State, there'll be a lot of points scored, in my opinion, I think in the second half. I think when teams make adjustments here. First half, they're going to try to feel each other out. But it's going to be a great game. I think at the same time, though, I could see Tennessee winning this game by 10 points or more when you get in the fourth quarter. And I base that a lot on the two-headed monster when it comes to their running back situation, and at the same time, how many darn receivers they have that are good. So it's going to be a fascinating matchup. I think with the spread, I think what's it? Tennessee sitting at -8 right now, according to ESPN and a couple other ones. I'd probably take that, but it's not going to be surprising to me, if North Carolina State is in this game in the fourth quarter and Tennessee kind of breaks away and maybe makes it a 2-possession game. So, you're getting your showcase Saturday night, buddy. Nico versus Grayson McCall. I get there's another interesting game going on at the same time in Lincoln, Nebraska. But if you're looking for offense as well, this one's going to be fun to watch on ABC. I'm jealous you guys are getting to go to it.
I wouldn't really be missing much from Colorado and Nebraska. I think that those two programs are overrated anyway. But I will say, I'm impressed with what Matt Rule has done and what Coach Deion Sanders has done as well.
It's going to be fun, man.
Oh, yeah.
That game. I mean, I'm going to that game. Like, it's going to be. You throw Dylan Raiola out there and Shedeur Sanders. I mean, and then at Nebraska at night. I chose that game over going to Texas, Michigan, just because I want to see what that is going to look like with those two teams. So it's going to be fascinating. But at the same time, literally at 7:30, you're going to have a good one between Tennessee and North Carolina State. And I do think that one delivers.
And I think both quarterbacks will be throwing for over 350 as well. I don't trust Colorado's secondary, and I don't trust Nebraska's secondary.
No.
So, but like you mentioned, this isn't the Sun Belt Conference anymore where you're throwing for 27 scores and 4 picks. This is the ACC where defenses are a lot better than expected.
Yes.
The offensive side of the ball is going to need a lot of help, but unless you're Miami, of course. But at the same time, this is probably Grayson McCall's biggest game that he's played in so far in his career that has spanned over, 6 seasons at least.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. And so you're going up against possibly the number 1 pick in next year's draft. You've got Tennessee's offensive line that has, to me, 3 first-round draft picks in Lance Hurd, in Cooper Mays, and Javonte Spraggins. Yeah. And you've got the young freshman phenom at Q. Now you're in for quite a treat for this ball game.
I think Tennessee has set themselves up for the future really well. And I think this could be a benchmark game in their eyes because they're going to come back and play Kent State next week. And then the schedule gets, interesting with SEC play. But, to me, this could be one of the showcase games for Nico on Saturday night. And that's nothing against Grayson McCall because I think he is a good quarterback. I just think all eyes are going to be on what Nico does.
And if you look at how it's benefited them in recruiting, it's no wonder why you got the number 1 quarterback in the nation in the class of 26 coming to Knoxville. Correct. For now. But anyway, going to another big game that's going to be defining. How about the young quarterbacks in Lenora Sellers and Brock Vandegrift? Both are coming off of mediocre performances last week against not so strong opponents. South Carolina in particular looked really bad offensively last week.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest. Going into this season, and I talked with Chris about this probably last year around this time, and I asked him, would Shane Beamer be fired after next season? He said, no, they got a young quarterback, they got a young roster, and it should be fine. Now I'm starting to kind of ponder towards, well, I don't know. Because after what happened last night, that says a lot. Because let's just hear me out, Trey. You can disagree with me, and that's completely okay. If you look at how South Carolina performed offensively and what they were supposed to do, that's not a South Carolina offense at all under Shane Beamer. And it's hard if you're Lenora Sellers, it's hard to come in and replace a guy like Spencer Rattler, who will arguably go down as, I think, a top 5 quarterback in South Carolina history. It's hard to do something like that. And now you've got all this tremendous pressure on you. You've got not a whole lot of talent at receiver, although if you look at the portal-wise, you've got some. But these aren't guys that have played in the SEC. These aren't guys that played in Power 4. These are guys from the group of 5. They come from the American. They come from the Mountain West. I mean, these aren't guys that are used to an SEC offense. And it showed last week. They got utterly dominated by Old Dominion's defense. So, not that it will happen, but is there a possibility, and is there a situation where if you don't come off strong offensively in this game, does Beamer seat get hotter?
It's a lot to unpack. I think last week, I could say this about a number of teams last week, that they did not perform well against lesser talent. We could go down the list if we wanted to, and we just talked about a team in Michigan that was playing Fresno State, who, by the way, lost their coach over the summer. Look, last week was not the coming out party that Lenore Sellers needed. At the same time, offensively, I didn't think it was a good game plan on offense, to be honest with you. I think there could have been times that they tried to rush the ball more, take a little bit of pressure off Sellers. I don't think this is a kid that is worried about Robbie Ashford behind him right now. Shane Beamer has made it known that Lenore's is the quarterback, and that's how they're going to roll. Now, I say all that. By the way, Dylan Stewart, badass player. I know that he went up against Old Dominion's offensive line. I don't care. Dylan Stewart is going to be a problem for a team. He'll be a problem this weekend for Brock Vandergrift. He's going to be in his grill. But getting back to the overall aspect of this, I think it is a big game going to Lexington. First off, it's going to be pretty cool. This is the first SEC on ABC 3:30 game. I think that's pretty neat. Whatever. I don't mind it. It's pretty cool. But also at the same time, it is kind of a, how do you follow up last week? And South Carolina players were not satisfied, pissed off. Look at Shane Beamer after the game. He wanted no part of that post-game interview. He was ready to go in that locker room and get into his players. I don't know how much Kentucky learned going up against Southern Miss last week, in a game where they played 2.5 quarters. I mean, we weren't even able to see the second string play against Southern Miss last week. I do think, though, that we're getting a quarterback matchup where Brock Vandergrift, in my opinion, has got the upper hand going into this game. I think when you look at what Kentucky's trying to do on offense compared to what South Carolina's trying to do on offense, I think this mismatch it's going to be fascinating to me, because I know South Carolina is a pretty good football team, okay? And I know they have playmakers at certain spots. But to me, it's all about the game plan of what they're trying to do with Dow, what they're trying to do, what Shane's trying to do when it comes to passing the football. If they cannot open it up down the field, brother, there's going to be problems for South Carolina on Saturday. Kentucky has the ability to run the football. And if they get Brock Vandergrift enough time in the pocket, Brock Vandergrift can pick your secondary apart. But at the same time, this feels like a comeback game for South Carolina. They're not walking into Lexington. They're not, sure, they had a bad game last week. Okay, brush it off. It's still a win. I don't want to – it's hard to pinpoint a second game of the season and say, okay, if Shane goes to Lexington and loses, the seat gets a lot hotter. To me, it all depends on, okay, if they lose, how did they lose? Did they lose by 17 points because the offense was stale? Or did they lose by 10 points because, okay, they played a good game, but Kentucky found ways, maybe a turnover or two, found ways to get them at the end? I think there's a separation point in that when it comes to Shane Beamer and kind of looking at what his future looks like. Sure, the schedule's tough, man, and I get where they were picked, 13th out of 16th in the league. But at the same time, I look at this Kentucky team and I'm like, okay, like, what have you done for me lately type of deal? I understand the bowl games and the wins and get that part, but you're looking at a team that might have had to change coaches last year if Texas A&M boosters didn't get cold feet at the last second and say, hey, Mark Stoops, we're good. So I still think there's a lot to prove on both sides and for both teams. So that's why I kind of look at this one and think, okay, South Carolina can go in there and pull the quote-unquote upset over Kentucky, but at the same time, Kentucky can run the football, set things up for Brock, and makes things kind of ugly if it gets to that point. This game, to me, it's easy to pick Kentucky. I think it is because they're playing at Kroger Field and whatnot in the quarterback situation. But could this be a game where Sellers comes out and, has 100 yards rushing on the ground, is able to make plays outside the pocket? I don't know. But I do think that, sure, the heat is rising a little bit on Shane Beamer, and they want to see some results, especially after last season. I don't think we're at a point now where we can say, okay, Beamer might be done if he loses this game, compared to what the hell we saw with Florida last week, where everybody's on Billy Napier. Two different circumstances. But I think this game, you're going to see the Gamecocks come out and put up a hell of a fight. And I do think it's close in the fourth quarter, brother. But I think, probably Kentucky kind of wins it at the end.
I think it's going to be a defensive battle, too. I
do, too.
The studs on both sides. You already mentioned Dylan Stewart. He's going to be a first-round pick eventually.
Yeah.
We got Jamon Dumas-Johnson, who's coming off of injury last year, who is an All-American, may I remind you, for the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yes.
And this dude is a stellar linebacker. He's going to be a first-team All-SEC by the end of the year.
Yes.
You've got arguably the best interior lineman in Deion Walker, who's going to be a problem. Not to mention that secondary that showed out. And come on. This is going to be a struggle for both of these young Qs.
I get it. I do. I get it completely. And I think that's where I think Brock's going to have to pick up some first downs with his legs this weekend. I think that could maybe be a difference maker on some third downs. And maybe that changes the outlook of the game. You never know. But I do think that you're going to see a struggle, like you said, on offense for both sides at first until they settle in. Then maybe we start seeing some deep shots down the field connecting and whatnot, and maybe the game opens up a little bit, get a little bit more, offensive output. But yeah, I'm curious to see how this one plays out in Lexington for a lot of different reasons.
Let's go on over to another little subject real fast, Trey, before we let you go. A couple more. And, this has been a fun little conversation with you, my man. Let's talk about the hot seat now. Which one is cooled off? Which one is heated up a good bit? We already mentioned Shane Beamer. We already mentioned Billy Napier. How about Clark Lee? His seat kind of cooled down a little bit after the big win out in Nashville.
Let me tell you something. I could not, just as a college football fan, I couldn't have been more excited for Vanderbilt to win that game. Look, man, they go through a lot in Nashville, okay? You got a town that is home to so many alumni of so many other different schools, and Vanderbilt is, it's something you do if you have time. Yeah, they had their diehards. But, man, you look at last weekend, and again, this is nothing new. There were 10,000 Virginia Tech fans there, and they made it loud. But for Vanderbilt to come out and Diego at quarterback, and it was just something so fun to see Vanderbilt win that game. And I think the way it happened too, you're up by 17 points, Virginia Tech comes back on you. You miss a field goal at the end of regulation. You're like, oh, dang it. All right, that's it. Vanderbilt's going to lose in overtime. Then they come back and, they score first, and then the defense, wins it for them. Look, that's a big time win for Vanderbilt and Clark Lee, and it couldn't happen to a better guy in Clark Lee. I think one of the nicest coaches, down to earth, knows what he's doing. He knows how to coach ball. He's just in a situation at Vanderbilt where it's difficult, but at the same time, good for him. Clark Lee is not going anywhere. He's going to be just fine. And man, if Vanderbilt wins 4 games this year, 5 games. That's a nice season for Clark Lee. You're going to have some folks looking at Clark Lee and be like, wait a minute. Okay, if you can do that at Vanderbilt, what can you do with a roster of stars? I'm not trying to get ahead of myself here. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was a big game for them and a really nice win. Those players deserved it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Clark Lee, whenever he took that Vanderbilt job, he's going to come into a horrible situation. You have nobody on your roster that's a 5-star. You got nobody that really wants to be at Vanderbilt. The only reason why people will come to Vanderbilt is to either play football or they want to be an engineering major.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, come on. That's the mecca of engineering. Not only are you getting a good degree from arguably one of the best schools in the country, you're also there to play football. And for Clark Lee to come in, I think this is really his second biggest win so far in his tenure. I know they beat Kentucky back in, I think during his first year.
Well, they beat Kentucky and Florida in those back-to-back weeks, if you remember. Yeah. So, I mean, those are big wins. Don't get me wrong, because they were SEC wins, and they won that game in Lexington, and then beat Florida. But I think with everything coming into this season, and I think at the same time, Virginia Tech coming in as an ACC, a lot of people Pat McAfee picked Virginia Tech to win the ACC this year. So for Vanderbilt to do that, and the fact that they were over 14-point underdogs heading into the game, that's why I think this was such a monumental win for Clark Lee. And I think that's why you saw the excitement level that you did, and rightfully so. They deserved it. Good on Vanderbilt. And I love Diego at quarterback. A kid will run his mouth. He doesn't care. And by the way, if folks are forgetting this is the same quarterback that went to Auburn last year and beat the hell out of the Tigers before they had to play Alabama. So
and body slammed a dude.
Right. Let's not act like this kid, this is just his first big win. No, he went to Auburn and kicked their butts right before the Iron Bowl. So he knows how to win. He's a winner. Let's go.
And Trey, I was high on Diego Pavia before the season. I'll show you a little article that I wrote before the season started. I think I wrote this back in April or so. Hopefully that no ad pops up. There will be. This is what I said about him. And look at me. I was correct. I knew as soon as I saw him, whenever he was at New Mexico State, he has a factor to him that you don't see a lot of quarterbacks having. He kind of gave that Jalen Milroe type of player in a completely different conference. Now you bring that to Vanderbilt. You bring your offensive coordinator in Tim Beck, who called a fantastic game for Diego this past weekend. I mean, that's a reason why he was the SEC Player of the Week last week. And you know that there's just more to come. If they start off 3-0, I won't be surprised. But at the same time, it is Vanderbilt. Anything can happen. So I'm very high on Diego Pavia. I think he'll be an all-SEC quarterback eventually, and I think he's going to fit well into an NFL offense if he is given the chance, of course.
Don't disagree. And it's, what they were able to bring over from New Mexico State, it only helps them. Let's not forget, I know we're dealing with the OC, but let's not forget, too, his former head coach is on that staff, too, there with Jerry Kill. So
I think he's a special advisor, isn't he?
Yeah. So a lot of familiarity with Vanderbilt. So congratulations to them. Let's see what they can do coming off that win. And Vanderbilt get to 3-0. Sure would be fascinating to me. So good job on them and Clark Lee.
Mm-hmm. Trey, last one before we let you go, brother. We released our best bets of the weekend, according to our good friends over at MyBookie. We have Texas as the favorite, as the 6.5. Arkansas and Oklahoma State will be going over 60.5. South Carolina, Kentucky will be hitting the under at 45.5, and Ole Miss is the favorite at 40.5. Tennessee, North Carolina State hitting the under at 59.5, and then Mississippi State at a +4.5. We went 2-3 last year. We did okay. We had some hits. We had some misses. Lost a little bit of money either or. What is your best bets for the weekend, my man?
All right, so I'll definitely go Auburn covering 13 against Cal. That game was ugly last year at Cal. I think this Hugh Freeze offense, Peyton Thorne, they'll be fine. Auburn's going to cover this weekend. I think Arkansas is going to get the 7.5. They're going to cover that one. So I think they're good in Stillwater. At the same time, I'm going to go kind of on a ledge here. I think that, well, they don't have a line for that one, that Samford, Florida game. I think I would have took Samford in probably the 50 points that they would have gotten out of that one. I'll throw one at you, kind of out of left field a little bit. I think Jeff Lebby and Mississippi State go out to Arizona State and Tempe, and I think they cover the 6.5 points. And I think there's a chance. I think they cover. Big difference. I think they cover. There's a chance Jeff Lebby and them go out there to Tempe and snag a win from the Sun Devils. So just keep an eye out on that one in the back of your mind.
This is going to be a fun little weekend, brother.
Right?
I mean, this is going to be a lot of great things going to happen. I think that may win some money, may lose some money. Anything could happen in the wild, wild west that is the college football season. Trey Wallace, Outkick senior college sports writer, joining us here on SEC Unfiltered. Check him out everywhere on Outkick.com. Check out his podcast, The Trey Wallace Show, over at Outkick as well. Hit him up on X as well. What you're at there on X, brother?
Yeah, brother. You can follow me at Trey Wallace _. Just having a lot of fun. A lot of crazy stuff going on. Getting outside the SEC this weekend. Going to be in Lincoln, Nebraska for whatever the heck I'm about to witness. I have no idea. I just know that it's going to be an entertaining environment. So, but look forward to getting back into the SEC next week. And yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. I hope you guys have a wonderful time in Charlotte. That's going to be a fun game, and look forward to watching y'all's coverage from there.
Yeah, man. Like we said earlier, Outkick is a fun outlet to look at. We haven't just had Trey on. I've interacted with guys like Chad Withrow. I'll be having Dan Dockich on next week and talking some college basketball. You know, and I love the guys over at Outkick. Been following them since the COVID year. They put together some great content, unfiltered content, and we're just blessed to have worked with a great organization like them. Trey, been a pleasure, man. Have a great rest of the day, and let's have a great week of college football.
Hey, man, y'all have a good time. Appreciate you having me.